No one believed me. They said, Christina, we know what you do for a living and we know that you travel, but there's no way this is going to happen. Because I said it's going to be a really tough 2 to 3 years, and actually 5 years. J&J, you had Pfizer, Moderna, because there was no other option. So they had to step up and bring that. I wish what they would have done is not made it mandatory. I wish what they would have done is really explain the potential side effects and what they saw in the studies. I wish that would have been made clear to people, and then people could make that decision, but that just wasn't the case at the time.
Liebe Freunde, wir leben in bewegenden Zeiten. In den letzten 3, 4 Jahren hat sich auf diesem Erdball sehr, sehr viel getan. Es gab Corona und Covid, es gab sehr, sehr viele neue Ereignisse in dieser Welt und sehr, sehr viele Menschen haben zum ersten Mal sehr viele Fragen gestellt. Ist das denn alles richtig, was da draußen weltweit passiert? Wie sieht es aus mit Vergiftung? Wie sieht es aus mit all den Dingen, die aus unseren Wasserhähnen aus dem Himmel, Stichwort Chemtrails, tagtäglich runterkommen, runterregnen? Und wie sicher bist du heute und deine Liebsten? Und genau dafür habe ich eine absolute Expertin in unseren heutigen Podcast eingeladen. Das ist eine Frau aus den Vereinigten Staaten, die sich für die großen Konzerne in einer führenden Position, sie hat auch Konzerne geleitet, befand und irgendwann mal für sich entschieden hat, dass es an der Zeit ist, dort auszusteigen, weil sie irgendwann dann gemerkt hat, dass das, was dort propagiert wird, nicht das ist, was sie im Herzen spürt. Sie hat sich selbst ständig gemacht und hat ein weltweit globales, großes Unternehmen aufgebaut, weil sie irgendwann mal festgestellt hat, dass das, was in den Pharmakonzernen weltweit propagiert erzählt wird, einfach nicht mehr die Wahrheit ist. Sie ist aus der Biotechnology, sie ist aus dem Bereich Nanotechnologie und hat sich ihr Leben lang die Frage gestellt, wie entstehen Krankheiten bei den Menschen und wie kann diese behandelt werden, von HIV bis zu unterschiedlichen Viren weltweit. Und sie hat irgendwann mal für sich entschieden, dass es an der Zeit ist, auszupacken und nicht diese ganzen Informationen, wo sie verpflichtet war, geheim zu halten, endlich unter die Menschen zu bringen und die Produkte auch anzubieten, die wirklich helfen. Ich freue mich vom ganzen Herzen, dass sie da ist. Welcome, dear Christina, Dr. Christina Rahm.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I really appreciate being on here, Maxim, and getting ready to hopefully meet some of your audience and start this journey together.
Christina, you're more than welcome. And before our conversation here started, I also showed you my book and said this probably the success of your company and also my book was because we had this courage to speak about things which are not appreciated in the mainstream, but also more important at our time than ever before. In your career, you have this incredible life because you also had a lot of diseases, you had your own children, and now you have one of the biggest companies worldwide, which helps so many millions of people to eat better, to get rid of all the toxins. And all this started one day just because you were working on your heart and not only on your brain and money. Can you tell me a little bit about your story? What have you done in your life? Why are you doing what you're doing right now?
Oh, I love that. You're the first person that ever said to me that it started with my heart. And you're right. That's 100% correct. Intellectually, I've been able to do quite a few things. I'm very fortunate about the way my brain thinks and operates. So I've done, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, things that have to do with bioprinting the body, environmental work, a lot of stuff throughout. That's why I worked in 88 countries, but my heart kept going back to, for years, I was helping work on different things that had to do with diseases. And I felt like it was very important. I've had cancer. I had a brain tumor, spinal tumor, child with cancer, lost a child. So there was a lot of things where I wanted to do things to provide solutions. But with my personal life and my family's life, I would say, okay, pharmaceutical and biotech are fine. There's so many side effects. We need to do natural things. And I did a lot for my family and for myself to heal and to be okay. A lot of it wasn't just physical either. It was emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic work. And I knew because when I worked with the FDA and different formats, we would see people just get better. And everyone was like, why did they just get better before we even put them on any of our drugs. You know, we were testing, and usually it had to do with something with spiritually. People were meditating or praying, regardless of the religion, or supplements and natural healing they were doing alongside the traditional or before even the traditional, you know, chemotherapy or radiation. So that really touched me a lot because I saw it, you know, I knew it. We couldn't report on it, but I remember thinking, I've got to get out to people some of the things I've worked on, because those things were created really when I would go to sleep at night and I would pray and ask if I could provide solutions to help the world. And probably when I was about 26 years old, I kept having a dream that there was a war on healthcare. And I actually had one of the preachers in our group come to me and to our whole group and say that there was going to be a war on healthcare. They had seen this vision and that I was going to help provide solutions. And at the time I thought, this is so odd. I don't do solutions. You know, at the time, that's not what I was doing. I was working in pharmaceutical, but I thought, why would I be the person that's going to help? So I really didn't 100% believe it, to be honest. I thought, well, this is so odd. But then people kept coming up to me, regardless of what country I was in, regardless of what I was doing, and basically telling me the same message. So I started really paying attention. And then in 2015, when I was asked to go into a lab to work on things that would help our bodies detox or clean, and then protect and provide barriers, I had already gone through working on vaccines, retroviruses, human monoclonal antibodies, really tough techniques, you know, with teams of scientists and doctors. So to me, the idea at first seemed kind of boring. And then when I went to sleep at night, I started thinking, I think I'm supposed to do this, because I understood the threat of dirty bombs, nuclear war, biological warfare, because I had been in different projects. And so I realized it was probably, I was the person that could probably provide some solutions. And that came from my heart, because it was much easier to be a CEO of a healthcare company or to be at the top of a pharmaceutical and biotech company in their inner circle, because I really did enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed the work we did. That was easy, but to fight a system or to be different, that's hard. And I knew it was going to be hard. I don't think I knew it was going to be quite as hard as it's been, to be honest, because I've been attacked and had a lot of criticism, which was really hard for me, because I love to just make people happy. I love to heal and love, and the criticism was hard. But I also realize now that's part of life, and that's part of my journey. And if I would have just given up, then I wouldn't have been able to fulfill the mission that I believe I'm here to do. So it is a heart thing for me.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for sharing. You also mentioned that you was attacked a lot of time, and in the last 3-4 years, a lot of people heard the first time something about COVID and Corona and all this virus. And as far as I know, you was involved in all of this time before, because you was in science, you was in a nanotechnology, and you heard about all this, which was the first time given to the world around March, April 2020 before. You heard it as a scientist time before, is it right?
Yeah, I actually, throughout my career, we talked about biological warfare and how we would, like anthrax or different types of viruses, how we would fight that in the United States. Your pharmaceutical companies and your military, of course, were very involved in that, because they didn't want countries to be destroyed. So that was in my late 20s, early 30s, you know, where I would hear it and we would talk about it. That's why, like, retroviruses or antiviruses, shots, you know, all that stuff, we were trying to prep to get rid of one virus. You give people another virus, right? Or you affect their immune system. The problem with that is it can lower the immune system, and there's all kinds of side effects. But yes, for me, this was a long time coming. And then some of the doctors I had worked with in China, let me know basically around October of the previous year what was happening. And when I told my family and my closest friends, I only told probably 6 people outside my family. No one believed me. They said, Christina, we know what you do for a living, and we know that you travel, but there's no way this is going to happen. Because I said it's going to be a really tough 2 to 3 years, and actually 5 years of major changes from a healthcare and economic perspective. You know, it's going to be rough. And yeah, even Clayton was like, oh, this is going to last 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, unfortunately it's not. And so it was interesting that not one person believed me, but it's because conceiving, and I have to tell you, I wanted to be wrong. And I'm saying that sincerely. I remember thinking, please let me be wrong about this. Please let the people telling me but I knew the people. I knew the doctors. So I knew, and actually they sent a bunch of graphic pictures too of what was happening, which was like a horror movie. You know, it was bad because they were testing different vaccines, trying to do different things. People were hallucinating. You know, it was just it was a mess. And you know what our countries have dealt with, and whether it was man-made, which I believe it was in the lab, you know, because of projects that they were working on there. To me, it's irrelevant. The problem is we're dealing with it. And now you've got such a psychological and spiritual war, in my opinion, that it's even greater than the physical threat, which is why with the root brands, I really focus not just on physical, because to me, as a quantum physicist and a nanobiotechnologist, that's like a small part of who we are. You know, we are mostly energy, and that's a fact. So it's for me, that was a major part of the healing journey of all of this.
So you have, in your journey, you experienced different perspectives as a scientist, as doctor, as nanotechnologist, and your job was to find out why people get ill and how can we treat all the illnesses in the cells. And you said right now the sentence were energy, and somehow you was also, or you should also treat the people with this old school medicine by giving them cocktails or drinks or tablets, which you understood are not the best solution if you understand human or humans, not only human body, as a kind of energy. And I can imagine this was a kind of difficult situation for you to understand the one you feel and see with the patients, and another one which is still like something which is about 20-30 years older right now, but doesn't fit anymore to what you find out with your research. How can we explain what is going on worldwide with Pfizer, which is the biggest pharma company worldwide? How is this world governed by biotechnology, money? How does this all belongs and depends to each other?
Well, you've got the United States as a major powerhouse, and every country, like you look at Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, you know, UK, pick a country, they're invested in the stock market, right? And a huge part of that, you've got your energy stock market, you know, your commodities, and then you've got pharma and biotech. I mean, that's a huge industry right in itself, one of the largest in the world. And so anytime you have anything that's making a lot of money, right, in the world, anywhere, or a person or a company, there's an opportunity to be corrupt. There's also an opportunity, and I really do mean this, to do great things for people throughout the world. The issue is, if you don't have the right board of directors, if you don't have the right people leading the company, you can get off kilter on what's happening. And I will tell you, I think the pharmaceutical and biotech companies were working on, you know, viruses or retroviruses and different things to help people. And I mean that sincerely. I think trying to create a solution, because if you look at a country, you can't be not prepared, right, if you're attacked by another country. And so I do think a majority of the pharmaceutical and biotech we're trying to protect with our military, our people. I just think the test results from the studies were not something I would have approved. You know, as what I do for a living, I would have waited until we understood what was going to happen. And then from my perspective, we were going to hit herd immunity regardless, and we would have done it without as many side effects. That was my opinion. And a lot of opinions actually of scientists like me that we couldn't say, you know, verbally, because fighting a major industry like that is extremely, it's just not, you shouldn't be silent, but it's a very long, hard battle. And Pfizer's produced some of the top drugs in our world, right? Johnson & Johnson has two, of which we're both agencies. We've the biotech has saved people. But again, here's the issue. I'm not for biotech and pharma. I'm for people. So for me, it doesn't matter if you have a study that's showing that there's so many side effects, is it even worth it? And sometimes that comes down to a monetary decision. And for me, that's completely wrong, because we need to look at people individually. What's best for the overall people is what we should do. And, I probably will never win that argument, because I think, the argument on most of the sides of the countries are we had to do what was best that they thought at the time for the mass majority. I know that doesn't answer your question completely, but from my perspective, it was about what do you do as far as a public appearance, right? As a politician that's governing a country. And then also, what do you do as a company that your job is to make pharmaceuticals and vaccines? They're going to step up. I mean, one of those companies, you had AstraZeneca, you had J&J, you had Pfizer, Moderna, because there was no other option. So they had to step up and bring that. I wish what they would have done is not made it mandatory. I wish what they would have done is really explain the potential side effects and what they saw in the studies. I wish that would have been made clear to people, and then people could make that decision, but that just wasn't the case at the time.
Which is even more difficult to understand right now, because now, after the most of the people, or a lot of people had the vaccination, we have even more information about what happened afterwards. Yeah, like a lot of women are not able to get pregnant again, or a lot of, especially in Germany, there is a German soccer league, it's called Bundesliga, and I never heard that in one season there was ever anyone who had cancer in his in this, I don't know how you call this, the balls. Yeah.
Balls, yeah.
Yeah, right. And in one season it was like 3-4 different players about 2 years afterwards, after this COVID stuff, which was also pretty challenging. Why does it happen all right now? And all the last 20 years, it was almost none of these cases which you heard in media. So we have a lot of side effects, which is also coming right now after COVID, after all this information. If we look at your own life, you was working to get people rid of illnesses, but you on yourself had several times cancer, if I'm right?
Yes.
And you had also a tumor in your brain, which is one of these alone would be sufficient enough to die, or to not to exist here anymore. You are still here, and you was allowed to practice on yourself. Maybe it's this kind of spiritual gift to understand what can I do. You also, maybe you can tell us the story, what happened to you while you had these illnesses and diseases, and you was also pregnant, as far as I know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, and how does it, why are you still doing this interview right now and are not lying somewhere under the earth?
Yeah, so I credit my parents for a lot of that, because I was brought up on a farm, and you just work if you're sick or not, you just work. And I actually was sick when I was little a lot. I was very skinny, and I was always had allergies and reactions to things. I couldn't drink milk. I couldn't do all the normal things that most kids do. And I just was told that, you get up and you go to school anyway. You get up and you work anyway. And I'm very thankful for that. When I got Lyme's disease, the same thing happened. I lost, a lot of my hair, my eyelashes and eyebrows, and from the treatments they were trying. And I just went back to school anyway and recovered. It didn't matter what I looked like. It mattered what I did. And from my perspective, going through a brain tumor and a syringomyelia, which was a tumor in the spinal cord. I still have that. I still have a small pituitary tumor, but it hasn't bothered me. I've had melanoma, squamous, basal cell cancer. For me, there was never an option to stop, because for me, I had a lot to do, and I knew I was going to do a lot, not for myself, but for solutions. And I just knew there were things in the world. And specifically, I always focused on children and animals. And I know that sounds different to people, but in my dreams as a kid, I always would dream of helping in a hospital children and animals. And so for me, that's a reason to get up in the morning. That's a reason to help people, not just our generation, but the children and their children. And so it led me, my own children probably gave me the inspiration that I needed, though, to get up, because I wanted to teach my kids everything every day that I could. I also wanted to make sure they were self-sufficient. So if I died, that they were able to take care of them, their own life. But I probably made them grow up too fast. I look back and I expected a lot from my kids. I still do, actually. Yeah, I believe if you're not here with a purpose or a mission, then why are you here? And my son was telling someone the other day that I said, if my children aren't going to be good people or help people, then I don't want them here on this earth. And one of our friends was like, well, that's pretty harsh. And Duquesne was like, that's mom. Like, she believes if you're going to be here, then there's a higher calling that we each have. And it's not just to sit here and be happy, right? It's here to also offer to the world, because we're all sharing each other's energy. And that really drove me, knowing that I had a piece that I could help people. And I think it was more about, honestly, being spiritually elevated and loving despite a religion, because for me, being raised in a Christian home, we had Bible study each morning down at the table, which I loved. But I remember not buying into the fact that if you didn't believe just like me, you weren't going to heaven. I didn't buy into that at all, because I felt this love inside that was like much better than sending somewhere, saying if you don't think one way, you're going to hell. And so that message I've always wanted to share, across the world, just a message of love and healing and hope. And that led again to even producing products that could help people feel better, because one of the issues is when you have heavy metals in your body or you're sick, it's harder to love. It's harder to love yourself even, right? Because you don't feel good. And we have to start with loving our own life, and not because of self-gratification, not because it's about me, but because I need to help people. And to do that, I can't have self-hate, because if I do, then I will hate others. And this philosophy has really driven me. Even when I've been very sick, I get up when there's different things that happen to me, and I still go to work. It's hard for me to lay in bed even for a couple of hours, because there's a lot to get done, in my opinion. But I lay there to meditate. That's where you will get me to sit still and really focus on things.
Thanks a lot for sharing and for your wisdom and honesty. We're ready with the first part. Und das wiederum bedeutet, Freunde, für all diejenigen, die sagen, eine faszinierende Frau, die jetzt ihre Wahrheit spricht, die aus der Pharmaindustrie ausgestiegen ist und all das, was ihr damals verboten worden ist, an die Menschen weiterzugeben, zu empfehlen in Form von gesunden Nahrungsergänzungsmitteln, wie beispielsweise Kurkumin, statt irgendwelche Pharma-Sachen, hat sie selbst in ihrer eigenen Company namens The Root ins Leben gebracht. Das ist eine der am meisten weiter wachsendsten, schnellst wachsendsten Nahrungsergänzungscompanies weltweit, wo sie Produkte kreiert in diese Welt gebracht hat. Wenn du da Interesse hast, was da ist und was es konkret mit dir bewirken kann. Ich kann selbst sagen, ich habe das jetzt 4 Monate lang getestet und habe unglaubliche Ergebnisse vorzuweisen. Den Link, und wenn du Fragen hast, findest du auch außerhalb von diesem Interview. Einfach anklicken und dir das Ganze anschauen. Ansonsten sprechen wir im zweiten Part mit Christina zum Thema, warum ist es so wichtig, heute zu entgiften? Warum ist es so wichtig, heute die ganzen Toxine aus dem Körper zu bekommen? Und wie es das Ganze dir gelingt, deinen Liebsten und dir einen gesunden Lifestyle zu ermöglichen, ohne permanent irgendwelche Medikamente zu schlucken. Sprichst du die Sprache deiner Seele? Und wenn nein, dann findest du sehr viel praktisches Erfolgswissen zum Thema Spiritualität, Bewusstsein, Berufung, Geld verdienen, Partnerschaft oder deine Gesundheit in meinem Buch Soul Master. Hier kannst du es dir bestellen und hier kannst du unseren Kanal abonnieren.